This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
In freshman year, I took a physics class. Physics is hard, especially chapter 7 on vectors and forces. I didn't get it. The force was not with me. But I was determined. Man, if I can't get forces, how am I going to survive med school? So I studied my ass off. I mean, I watched videos, I went to extra office hours, I did problem set after problem set, and by the day of the exam, I knew every force question inside and out. And guess what? There was one question on forces. I got a C+ on that exam. Basically failed by Asian standards. You know, we're already stressed enough having to study this much, but then we're also expected to read your mind and just know what the questions will be. Life would be so much easier if we all just knew what was on the test. I learned the hard way, so in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to figure that out. How to figure out what you should really focus on, what you can just straight up ignore, and finally, once you have all the tricks, we will talk about a super secret study plan that you can use to ensure that you will never fail an exam ever again. This plan is pretty much foolproof and universal. It doesn't matter if you're studying for nursing school or the MCAT or your hunter licensing exam, these tips work for everyone. And we call it studying with a paintbrush. But more on that later. Let's first figure out what's on the test. And I'm going to show you a ton of ways to approach this. First, pay attention to what the professor emphasizes or hints to in lecture. They highlighted that word for a reason, or they spent half the class on that one slide for a reason. So if you notice any of the strange behavior and you're watching a lecture recording, then you best rewind it and make sure you understand that exact topic. So next, I took this a step further in college. Not all professors write their own tests, but many of them do, and this strategy works particularly well for those tests. What I did was I would compile a list of topics that I thought would be important, and then I would go to office hours and kind of play detective. If you pay attention, sometimes the professor would explain it very well and kind of give away the test question. But if the professor was kind of vague about it or it doesn't sound like they had thought it through completely, then maybe it's not that important. Sometimes the course syllabus will tell you plain as day what is important to know for the test. I know a lot of us on this channel are in medicine, so let me just show you this from our medical boards. I mean, look at this. Look how precise that is. If you're studying for a standardized test, then I would just do a Google search and you'd probably find this kind of breakdown for your test. Before we move on, I want to talk about Squarespace. Squarespace is a website builder, and let me tell you, we love Squarespace. You see, people nowadays, we all have a cell phone number. We all have an email. And I think the next most important thing is to have a website, which is basically your home on the internet. Especially now, since a lot of job applications and even the interview process is all virtual, having your own website really helps you stand out. If someone wanted to learn more about us, for example, we'd simply refer them to mikeandmatty.com. They can find all our videos, our blog, our newsletter, our music. You can even upload your resume if you wanted to. And my favorite part is that it's customizable, so you can design it however you want and let your personality shine through. Zero coding skills required. So head on over to squarespace.com/mikeandmatty for a free trial and then 10% off your first purchase. Next, you want to ask seniors or other students who've already taken the test. Like, just straight up ask, what should I focus on for the exam? They might not remember all the topics of the class, so you should try to get as detailed as possible and kind of bring up some topics yourself. If they feel uncomfortable sharing specifics, or if it's just against the test policy, then the next best thing to do is you could ask them exactly what resources they use to study. What review books did they use? Do they have flashcards or notes that you could look at? Any past papers? And this takes us to the next tip, which is to find practice tests, past papers, problem sets, and see what questions were commonly asked. If you're studying for a national standardized test, then this shouldn't be too hard to find. Like, think about the MCAT, right? Like, how many thousands of practice tests are there for the MCAT? But whether your exam has too many practice tests or too few practice tests, it's again always a good idea to ask your teacher or ask your friends which practice resources they would recommend. Now, if you don't have any friends, then go online and see what people are posting on forums or YouTube or TikTok or wherever. You might have to do a little digging. And who knows, maybe someone out there has an entire YouTube channel dedicated to the subject you're studying, or even dedicated to the exact test that you're studying for. In most situations, taking practice tests is probably the best use of your time, because the more practice tests you take, the more you'll start to catch on to what the important topics are. But also, the more you'll start to think like an exam writer. The more you'll start to think, how could this information be asked in a multiple choice format? Or a fill in the blank format? Or how could they ask me to write an essay about this topic? You'll start to notice yourself think like a test writer, which is an amazing superpower because it's basically like reverse active recall, where you can reverse engineer what's on the test. Okay, so now that you know what's important to focus on for the test, let's talk about how to study with a paintbrush. Let's say that this box represents everything that was presented to you for the exam. And let's say that this circle in the center represents all the important stuff that you definitely need to know. A newbie would just try to study everything from top to bottom. That's what I used to do freshman year. I would naively read my textbook as if it were a novel, from beginning to end. If I had to demonstrate what that would look like with a paintbrush, it would look something like this. I mean, I was trying to pick up every little detail. I didn't want to miss anything. But since I was spending so much time trying to catch every little detail, by the time the exam came around, I hadn't even gotten through all the important material yet. I mean, obviously I was a diglet. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was literally just digging aimlessly. But now I've evolved, and I know a better approach, and that is to start studying from the center and gradually move outwards. And with a paintbrush, it would look something like this. And I know it might seem weird at first because you might be going a bit out of order, but by the time the test rolls around, even if you haven't covered everything, you can feel reassured that you've at least hit the most testable topics where you'll score the majority of your points. So the other thing you gotta understand about paintbrushes is that when you paint over something, you'll always miss a spot. But that's okay. Don't ruin your flow trying to go back and fill in all the missed spots. Just keep going. Study all the way through in one complete stroke. That's how you always want to approach it, especially when learning new content. Each pass through is quick, but every time you go through again, you pick up more details and you fill in more gaps. The first time through, you're just trying to scope the subject. Then you're trying to grasp the big picture concepts. And then you're trying to learn the details. So that was studying with a paintbrush, and I find that this method works very well with the tree method, especially for learning new content. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you should definitely check out how to study with the T tree, and you can find that right here.